installation, review and test, and finally removal of the Power Pins 2 by Big Rock Innovations. And I've included removal in this review because I want to see if they leave any damage behind when you take them off the guitar, as I'm sure many people will be interested in that. The Power Pins 2 are described on the box as being a high-performance, revolutionary acoustic guitar stringing system. And on the box it also says that it's quick installation with no modifications, and it helps with quick restringing, fast stable tuning, and it protects the bridge and the bridge plate. Right, let's take them out of the box. But whilst I'm doing that, it's worth me mentioning that it doesn't claim in the instructions or on the box to do what people on the internet claim about these, and that is that they increase the volume and improve the tone of your guitar. And I find it interesting that the makers don't even claim that. And in the box we've got a little bit of padding, the instructions we need to fit them, and a little plastic bag with all the goodies we need to fit them. Right, let's take a look at what we get in the plastic bag. And in here we find the plate for the back of the bridge, an Allen key to tighten everything up, and the 6 power pins themselves. The plate for the back of the bridge basically looks like a piece of Meccano, and it's a sheet of steel that's been pressed through with 6 holes so that the Allen bolts can go through them. You also get the Allen key, which is just a standard Allen key and obviously is the right size for the bolts provided with the kit. The power pins are amazingly small, and you get the Allen bolt running into the back of the power plate with 4 washers, 3 large ones and 1 small, and they're just nickel plated steel. And this is surprisingly crude considering how much these cost, because in my mind, looking at them, they're very overpriced. You'll also notice they've got a letter stamped in on the back of them, and there's 3 separate letters stamped into them. There's 2 with B stamped, 2 with M stamped, and 2 with T stamped. Before I do anything with the power pins or with the guitar, I want to prepare to do a before and after test. So the first thing I'll do is mark off exactly where on the table I'm putting the guitar and the microphone. And this is just so I can make sure there's exactly the same distance between the 2 points on the before test and the after test. And this is basically why I'm not playing a tune and sitting with it on my knee, because of all the variations that will come into play. You'll also notice I actually had to move the microphone back, because this guitar produces really good volume without any modifications. So I've had to move the microphone further back so I've got some headroom, just in case these do give the guitar more power. And as a very simple test, I'm just going to play 1 note at a time and allow that to fade out naturally, and then strum a chord and the same thing. And I'm strumming exactly over the last fret to make sure I'm strumming in the same place. And now, to see if the power pins will have any effect on the built-in pickup, I'll record the guitar again, doing exactly the same thing, but this time recording it off the pickup. You may notice that I'm keeping the guitar sound completely flat and clean, and this is so I can tell if the power pins are having any effect on the volume or the tone. Right, now that I've got a before recording, I'll install them onto the guitar. Looking at the instructions to fit the power pins, there's an important bit, and it says the screws should be 1.5mm below the surface of the bridge. And to achieve this, I need to remove 2 of the washers. So this is obviously why they've provided 3 washers, so that you can adjust the number of washers in order to get the correct length of the screw. But remember, when you're measuring the length of the screw, it's important you've got the back plate in place, because this has quite an impact on how far the screw reaches. Before we start installing the power pins, we have to sort them out into the 3 letters, because the letters correspond with where they should be fitted on the guitar. The B stands for the bottom 2 strings, or the thickest strings, the M stands for the middle 2 strings, and the T stands for the top 2 strings, or thinnest strings. And this is because there's a slot running down the side of the power pins where you can put the string through, and it's obviously wider for the thicker strings. To start with, I'm taking one of the B's and I'll push the bolt through the back plate and then through the guitar. And you'll notice I've pushed one of the pins back in, and this is so I can locate the hole from the inside of the guitar, because obviously I'm doing it by touch. And I find it's a lot easier to feel the pin than to feel the hole, and also if I've got one pin through, I know I'm at the right hole. So this just simplifies the job for me anyway. And once I've got the bolt in place, I'll tighten the power pin on the other end, but I'll leave it finger tight because I'll need to move around the plate on the back of the guitar to line it up with the other holes. Now I'll repeat this process for the top string, pushing through the peg so I can find the hole, and also making sure I've got a power pin with T on it and I've got the correct amount of washers on. Once you've fitted the top one and the bottom one, it doesn't matter what order you fit the rest of the power pins in. As long as you've got those 2 to hold the back plate into place, you should be okay. You'll notice I'm speeding up all this part because it's very fidgety, so it takes me a while to get each one through the hole, and it's just repeating the same process over and over again. Saying that, I did partially tighten the bolts up a little more using the Allen key halfway through the process, and that's because I thought they were going to fall out again and I wanted to make sure they were held in place properly. You notice that I had to turn the Allen key and use the long end to do the top string, and this was because the bracing was in the way, so I didn't want to be banging against that. You'll also notice for the last 3 bolts I didn't have to use a pin to locate the hole, and that's because I could use the bolts I'd already fitted to give me a pretty good idea of where the holes were. If you try this yourself, you'll see it's still pretty fidgety though. Once you've finished the job, it looks really neat from the inside, which is kind of reassuring, but also kind of pointless, because you'll never see it. Right, before you tighten up all the bolts, you have to make sure all the pins are properly aligned, which is actually more difficult than it sounds, because there isn't a straight edge on them, so there's no way of easily aligning them. I ended up having to use a ruler and lining it up down the centre of the power pin and along the path of the strings. I also had to loosen the top E string one off again because I'd over tightened it and I couldn't turn it. And then finally, once you've aligned all the pins and tightened them up, we can put the strings back on. Fitting the strings back with the power pins in place is actually quite easy, but there is a little bit of fidgetiness about it because you have to have the ends of the strings facing in the right direction, because there's a groove in the power pins that's a semicircle, and they have to fit neatly into that. And I've made the job a little more difficult for myself by putting the old strings back on. It'd be far easier with new strings, but because I want to do a before and after test, I want to use the same strings. Sorry my hand keeps getting in the way, but it's kind of difficult to avoid with a job like this. And they look neat when they're in place from the top as well as underneath. And all I've got to do now is tune the guitar up and do a quick test. And I'll do exactly the same thing where I strum down each individual string and then play a single strum. And then I can compare the before and after. This bit should have been easy. However, I noticed straight away there was something wrong with the waveform, especially with the higher strings, the G, B and E, and also when you strum the chords. And I even tried restrumming the chords a couple of times to check that I was strumming them hard enough, because they just didn't have the power they had before I fitted the power pins. And no matter what I did and how many tests I did, I was still getting the same results. So I played around with the guitar for a while off camera and just played a few tunes. And when you're playing the guitar through the piezo, it became painfully clear that especially the top B string and E string had a fraction of the power they had previously. And no matter what you did with the tone controls, you couldn't get them to balance out with the bottom strings, which overpowered them. To demonstrate this, close your eyes and try listening to this piece of music. Now you're listening specifically for the balance between the strings. I'll play it first with a guitar with the power pins and then on a guitar without the power pins. And there's going to be a slight difference in the tone because it's a different guitar. However, you can hear clearly the balance in the strings. And the first one with the power pins, you can hardly hear the top three strings. Now, here that is again on another very similar guitar. Right, let's just hear the first couple of bars of both of those again. The first one with the power pins, the second one without. I think I've chosen the tune that best demonstrates the problem, and I hope you agree. Now, whilst I can't get the tones of the two guitars exactly the same because they're made out of different wood, you can hear quite clearly that the emphasis on different strings is very different, and the guitar with the power pins has lost all the power to the top three strings. Now, after studying the guitar closely, I found the problem. And what's actually going on is there's virtually no angle between the saddle and the bridge. So the string is coming straight out of the power pin and straight across the saddle without putting any pressure down on it. It's virtually straight. Now personally, I like a very low action on my guitars, and on all my steel strung acoustic guitars the saddle is just as low. So the power pins couldn't work on any of my guitars. However, I've never heard anyone mention this in the past. I've heard people complain because on guitars like Taylor's they sometimes don't fit through, the bolt's not long enough. So for me it's better if I remove the power pins, because even the strings that are getting a good contact with the saddles aren't producing any better tone or any more sustain or power. So the concept that the power pins create more power is a myth, and they don't actually work, and they're very expensive. So for most people I would say these are a complete waste of money. However, as with most things in life, there are exceptions, and the one I can think of is if the bridge is coming away on your guitar and the glue is failing, you could use power pins to fix this problem and hold the bridge down to the guitar, and it could actually save you money, because to fix this problem could be very expensive by a luthier, plus the fact you could easily solve the problem yourself using power pins. And just so you know, this brilliant idea wasn't mine, it was actually put in the comments, but I can't for the life of me remember who it was who left that comment. Really good one though. Once I'd removed the power pins, I inspected the bridge for damage, and there was nothing to speak of. However, there were slight dents, and if I was to have tightened up the power pins anymore, it would definitely have left marks. So beware of that if you're not sure if these will work on your guitar. Leave them semi-loose until you're sure they'll work. By now really these strings should be replaced, because they've been on and off and on and off. However, again, I want to do a final sound check at the end to see if the guitar's restored back to where it should be. And once I'd put the strings on, you could actually see the angle was restored between the saddle and the bridge. So the string was definitely putting pressure down on the saddle so that the piezo pickup would work correctly. So finally I'll do something I wasn't expecting to do, and that is I'll check the sound now and compare it to how it was with the power pins in place. Firstly, here's the guitar with the power pins. Now here's the guitar without the power pins. I think that's a massive improvement without the power pins. However, here it is again, and try to concentrate not on the overall tone but on the strength of each individual string. With the power pins, without the power pins. So my conclusion is, unfortunately, that the power pins are very overpriced and they don't have a positive effect on your guitar at all, and quite likely they have a negative effect on your guitar. If you enjoyed this review and test, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new videos. And if you'd like to do some guitar lessons or guitar courses, go to the GCH Guitar Academy YouTube channel, and there you'll find some playlists with all the lessons in order from complete guitar courses. And you'll also find them at www.ebooks4guitar.com, where you'll find the PDFs to accompany all the guitar courses. Thank you very much for watching.